Well, there you go. Technology, don't you love it? I'm live here with Nikki Chamberlain. Hello, Nikki. It's lovely to see you. We've not seen one another for ages.
I know it's been a while since I've been able to jump on one of these, but I could not resist with today's subject matter, which we're going to dive into shortly. So it is absolutely lovely to see you at the what's kind of heading towards the start of this bank holiday weekend, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Well, you make a really good point. Bank holidays. I don't know about you. It's been really quite nice weather. And for me, that's really a time when I just think, oh, I can't wait to get outside and do something outdoors. And so, this is a good time actually, isn't it? If you've got an extra day off work, maybe not quite as pressured as usual, to start to think about the topic of our conversation today. And so, welcome to Moving Through Menopause, and we're talking all about exercise. Ooh. and and I've invited Nikki along. Nikki's a health and wellness coach, but she's also an athlete, Nikki. I can only describe you as an athlete, honestly. Nobody pays you for doing your athletic pursuits, unfortunately. So you're not a professional athlete, but oh my goodness, the lengths you go to. I know, tell me, ultra distance marathon running is the thing that you do. And I take my hat off to you, Nikki, because you definitely won't catch me doing that. So is your training going well at the minute? Are you feeling fit and healthy and everything?
Yeah, training is going pretty well actually. I'm just 2 weeks on Sunday is my next big event. So I'm kind of coming towards the end of the training block really for this event. I've got another fairly big weekend next week, but then I get a nice
Mm.
taper week running into the event before I embark on what is rather a long run on a week, 2 weeks on Sunday.
Oh well, I wish you luck now because I might forget. Although I will see you on LinkedIn telling us that you're going and that you've done it, and I'll be with you in spirit, but definitely not in person ever.
Well, I do like to share my exploits as much as I can on LinkedIn just to kind of help with, motivation and inspiration for other people. So yeah, let's hope it does that.
Yeah, no, I think it is sometimes challenging, isn't it, to think that the things that we put out there might be putting people off and thinking, oh, they're so good at this and I'm just rubbish, or vice versa, I'm really good and everybody else is rubbish. So this is obviously something that's close to my heart, helping people to move more, to feel better. And there's no doubt that as far as menopause goes, movement is one of the things that we can do that will potentially help every single symptom of menopause. So, this is why we're talking about movement today. Not because we want you to go running marathons, not because of that, but if you choose to, well done, good luck. But if not, let's just all of us maybe accept the idea that movement is a must. At some point, at some level of movement in every part of our day is really for the benefit of our health, mental, physical, overall health and well-being, is something that we really could do to be doing more of. And that's why we're here, to help people to just get their head around how the heck to do this thing that people call different things, don't they, Nikki? There's different ways of talking about movement, and that might even just be the first barrier. The whole word. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it can be a little bit off-putting. People talk about exercise and exercise can be a triggering word for some people, and it can be, it can have connotations right back to when people were at school, for example, and school sports days would put the fear of people or the PE lessons, they just kind of didn't like them. And it's something that can kind of, live with you and kind of move with you through the rest of your life, really. So it is about finding a word that works for you. It can mean and amount to the same thing, but if exercise isn't a word that works for you, movement is a more gentle word that works and can have different connotations, or just being active, physical activity, or just being more active, whatever it is. I think that if you can hook onto the word that kind of works for you, and kind of build from there, then I think it does help to get over one of those barriers, definitely.
Yeah. And, the idea that it has to hurt or it has to be hard, I'm kind of thinking a little bit like you. I mean, you totally triggered me then with the school thing. Because although, people might look at me now and think I look athletic, perhaps. I don't know what they think, to be honest. But back in the day when I was at school, I was an overweight child who was not necessarily, it didn't come easy. You know what I mean? Oh, and coordinated. I was so uncoordinated. I always blamed the glasses for that. I couldn't catch a ball. So, and then that flipping rope in PE where you've got your bare legs going up this coir horrible rope thing and then running for the wall bars and, oh my gosh, balancing on an upturned bench. I mean, what was that about? But this can really put, and women in particular, I think, can be put off by that whole experience of PE at school. And I think, to be honest, I think that is changing for the better for this generation of young people, that there are opportunities to do yoga and Pilates and all sorts of different things. I don't know, archery, cricket, lots of different opportunities to explore, like you say, physical activity rather than this whole idea of torture. Really, is what that amounted to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think another issue that people do think is that if I'm not doing something big or I'm not doing something hard, and that feels uncomfortable for me, then I might as well not bother. And that's kind of definitely not true. I mean, if we look at the guidelines, kind of the guidelines for exercise that come from the World Health Organization, I think around 150 minutes of moderate activity a week,
Yeah.
70 or 75 minutes of vigorous activity a week, plus at least strength sessions on at least two different days a week. And the idea is that those minutes, if we go back to the minutes, that they are spread evenly throughout the week. So, it's not all on one day. So, you can take in there 3 or 4 or 5 days a week of moderate activity. And that's, things like light cycling, walking, all those sorts of things that don't necessarily have to be hard or feel hard, but they do still serve to get you moving, get your body moving, get your muscles and joints moving, and raise your heart rate a little bit. And that's kind of, that's the important thing. And that can be, that can be a place to start, rather than thinking that you've got to go and, run yourself into the ground.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And the thing you rightly quoted those guidelines, and that is a good starting point. Even that can feel a bit scary for some people. And particularly when you talk about strength training, the idea of, I don't know, lifting weights or might be very alien to some people. And so strength training can take so many guises. That even that, has connotations that we need to sort of strip away and say it might be as simple as having a couple of tins from the cupboard near to the kettle. And when you stick on the kettle, just, lift the tins up a few times, and so body weight training is a lot of the work that I do in Pilates and in yoga. And to be honest, for me, being able to handle your own body weight is really crucial for us. And so to think of, maybe things where you're doing sit up, stand up, sit down type. I mean, that's strength training for the legs, for the thigh muscles, the bottom muscles. So every time you sit on a dining chair, maybe you could stand up and down 10 times, and there you've done a set of strength exercises. So to really make this as accessible to people as possible. That's what we're talking about today, stripping away the barriers and just encouraging people to get curious and try something out maybe that you've never tried before. And you never know, you might just love it. I like the idea, you know, what you're saying, walking, cycling, and maybe using those things as a way of transport. You know, that's something that I've always tried to do, you know, especially when the kids were little. Let's jump on the bikes and go to the shop for whatever we've happened to have run out of, you know, instead of jumping in the car. And or even just take a stroll over there to your local shop. The shops are all very close to us now, aren't they? There's all these little outlets that are close to home. So instead of jumping in the car, grab a carrier bag. Hey, guess what? You weight training at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of isn't that it's again that kind of gets over another one of the barriers potentially, doesn't it? Which is, you know, time, potentially around time, right?
Yeah.
You know, this might slot in with, you know, one of the things that we'd spoken about around, you know, exercise maybe being considered a luxury because you just don't have the time to do it, right? Because you've got so many other competing responsibilities and you're putting other people first all of the time. Where do you actually find the time to do it? Well, one of the ways that you can do it actually is exactly what you've just said: incorporate some of the things into daily life. So if you've got to go to the shops, instead of jumping in the car, you know, try and walk there. Try and, you know, either walk some or all of your, you know, your route to work, for example. Like you say, have a family social day, potentially, you know, as a bike ride or something, or, you know, those sorts of things, so that you're still putting the family, getting the family involved, and putting them first, but also, you know, you're able to incorporate that as well.
Yeah, and I did read something about women being the real sort of barometer for family movement. So that, and you know, we have talked about this before, being brought up as part of fitness fanatic families, and that was yours and my experiences. But you know, it really isn't everybody's experience, is it? And so the women are really the barometer of that in the family. And so, you know, trips out for a stroll and together, looking at nature and, you know, the wildlife and whatever else, our local, oh, what is it called? Anyway, wildlife.
Nature reserve.
Oh, that's it. That's the word. Nature reserve. I mean, it's really upped its game over the last few years, and I've noticed that they've got a little indoor play area for families and an outdoor play area, and then there's lovely short walks, medium walks, long walks, and lakes, and you're even allowed to go and paddle in one point. So yeah, so things like this on your wonderful bank holiday weekend, getting out and about, and you know, into nature as well is so healthful for us. Sunshine, vitamin D, you know, reducing the cortisol, boosting the melatonin, get all these, oh gosh, I could go on and on and on. But anyway, you know, the thing about movement being viewed as a luxury as well, we've got this current cost of living crisis that we cannot ignore. And so, you know, we found that gym memberships are going out the window a little bit. But there are so many free opportunities. If we think about, you know, grabbing, all you need is a decent pair of footwear. That's the thing I say about, you know, running. If running was the thing that you did, there's no travel time. You just throw your shoes on, run from your own front door. And similarly walking, and so there's not all this gear. You don't necessarily need loads of gear, do you? And the time factor, and then the cost, of course. So you can get imaginative with finding free days out for families on internet, can't you, Jackie? Nikki. Oh, do you know what? What am I like, honestly, dear? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
I forgot where I was, Nikki. Sorry, Nikki.
That's okay. Yeah, it's about it's about, looking for what's accessible. Most definitely, there's plenty of stuff that's accessible, and of course the other thing that we're forgetting here to mention, which is definitely worth mentioning, is we are by our very nature, because we are kind of, exercisers by nature. We're thinking
Yeah,
in
true.
that way, right? But
Mm.
actually, physical activity and movement, it can be things like gardening. So,
Mm.
we're getting into that time of year now, actually, where you can get out in the garden and do some gardening, and doing something like that, is great and perfectly acceptable. Things like dancing,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
with potentially, straying into a little bit of a later part of the conversation, but,
True.
all of those sorts of things are very accessible, and, easy for you to do, that don't necessarily, like you say, require cost or travel or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as you said, movement is in my DNA. It's something I do because I love it. But there was a time when I rebelled, as a youngster, and I didn't do anything, particularly. I went away to university. I trained to, well, Polytechnic, as it was back then, trained to be a physiotherapist. And during that time, I actually gained 2.5 stone, Nikki. I don't necessarily, I don't even know that I've got any photographs of me 2.5 stone heavier than I am now. Well, it'd be about 3 stone heavier than I am now. Um, and so I wasn't in a good place. But I did at least have that history, if you like, to sort of call back on, to bring back into my life. And then maybe there's lots of people who have kind of fallen off the wagon or stopped doing something that they used to really love and enjoy. And then you almost forget how good it makes you feel to do these things, isn't it? And um, that the dopamine hit that we get from doing these things, you and I are now familiar with that effect, if you like, on the brain, and so we go in seek of that. We go seeking it out. Whereas if you're not having that on a daily basis, you're not going to miss it, are you? So there's a kind. I always kind of feel like there's a bit of a sort of hump that you have to get over to get to a point where if it is exercise like cycling, walking, swimming, aerobics, whatever it is, where you kind of get over the hump to a point where you suddenly feel like you don't feel like yourself if you don't do it, that may not apply quite so much to gardening. Although, I mean, honestly, if gardening was the thing that you did every day and then you suddenly couldn't do it, you would miss it, wouldn't you? You really would miss it. So, um, that for me, the how do we get over the hump thing? Have you got any sort of thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting points that you raised there that are all kind of relevant, and I know that, we originally said that this is going to be a conversation kind of around motivation. And that in
Oh well,
itself is an
that's
interesting
one.
point, right? Isn't it? Because we have to look at what comes first, right? Does the motivation come first, or does the action come first? And I think if we're
Okay.
talking about it in the context of menopause, as we very often are at
Mm-hmm.
this particular kind of age and stage of life, there's lots of physical barriers that kind of might get in your way. So a lot of those
Oh yeah.
menopause symptoms, around energy and fatigue, around kind of aching joints and aching muscles, are just kind of the things that potentially, give you that motivation barrier, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And also, and body image, self-confidence can be another one, but also the mind. I do a
Yeah.
lot of running. Running has been a part of my life for 14 years, and I've run kind of 6 days a week at the time. And I've noticed, even me in the last, 18 months to 2 years, that, I have the same motivation struggles sometimes that many other
Yeah.
people do.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
that kind of, I'm just not quite feeling it. But like you say, because I know that I can go for a run and I never regret a run, I might not be feeling it when I start. I might feel a bit low on energy, but I've got that anchor to hang on to, that I know
Mm.
that the run, the activity will energize me more, so that it will be worthwhile doing. It
Yeah.
means I can kind of get over that motivation hump and put the action first. So, I can take the action to put my trainers on, to get out the door, to go for the run, knowing that that will then return the motivation and, and will then enable me to keep going.
Yeah, I like that, the action. And so for people who are less familiar, it's just a case of taking that first step, isn't it, really? Yeah. And you mentioned about menopause symptoms like joint aches and pains, joint and muscle aches and pains, and the fact that pain is very much a barrier to exercise. But my specialty really is taking people from a place of pain to through those barriers that prevent them, whether it's something that's gone wrong in your shoulder, your neck, your back, or whatever. Helping you to put it right using movement as a therapeutic approach, and then from that, then you build on it and you can take it to a more recreational sort of a level. And when you're in a place of pain, it's really difficult to kind of grasp the notion that movement might be the thing that will get you out of pain. So there's a lot of fear around pain, quite rightly. We're programmed to be reluctant to put ourselves into that place of pain, and there's a good reason for that evolutionarily. But that actually movement can really take away the pain, and particularly around menopause. So strong tissues are more resilient and therefore less likely to give you painful signs or symptoms. And obviously I know this, but and this has been my journey too. Don't get me wrong, menopause, the reason I'm here is because my menopause was horrific, horrific. And, aches and pains abound. So this has been my journey, my experience, and thus, because I've, walked the walk is what I say. I've walked the walk, and I don't just talk the talk. Because it is, none of us are immune to this. Like you're saying, we don't wake up every day going, woohoo, we're just human. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, what we've done is we've kind of developed that resilience or that coping mechanism or that kind of understanding, and I certainly, as you're the qualified physiotherapist and the expert in kind of, yoga and Pilates, which are, very much kind of movement based. I absolutely bow to your kind of greater expertise in this particular area. But, I think there's a number of things, which is that, and I would never advise anybody, absolutely never advise anybody to kind of push through pain particularly, but pain is not always necessarily, a bad thing. It kind of depends on levels, but also, some of some of it can be just down to kind of the stiffness of inactivity. As we don't have the hormones lubricating our body the way that they used to, and we become more inactive for various reasons, the double whammy then ends up being that actually we feel those aches and pains, and as you were saying, it can just be that we just need to get moving more and move through that process that will then actually help. And I've seen that myself, literally within the last 3-4 months. I kind of felt that a lot of I was having some kind of stiffness in my back, and actually by increasing and doing a bit more running, because my running training is increasing because I'm training for a longer distance, I've actually felt less of the aches and pains that I was getting. So, I've had my own personal experience of that.
Yeah. I mean, this is it. We go to bed every night, and there are fibers in our soft tissues are continually growing these very fine fibers. And if only it's connective tissue, and they call it. There's a video on YouTube. They call it the fuzz. And so if you put your elbow in a cast and you didn't move it for 6 weeks, and you took the cast off, even if you hadn't hurt yourself, it'd be stiff as a board, and it would be painful to move. And that is what you're talking about, the idea that pain can be associated with stiffness. And then the fuzz is coming along every night, and so every day in an ideal world, you put your joints through the full range of motion to break down these fibrils or fibers that are growing in the night, that can just make the tissues feel a bit more tethered together instead of gliding and sliding on one another. And again, that sensation of that's part of what, when we get up in the morning, makes us feel stiffer than we might do, later on in the day. So yeah, there's lots of good reasons to consider movement as a solution to painful conditions. Lots of good reasons: strengthening muscles, mobilizing tissues that have become a bit stuck onto one another. There's lots of good reasons. Pain is a really complex area that we're not really here to talk about pain, are we? But suffice it to say, it's very complex. And so we're just talking about normal kind of aches and pains that people of our kind of age start to experience, as particularly at this time of menopause. So do you feel like we've adequately explored the barriers to why we might not be moving enough? I mean, I think the only other thing that we might maybe explore is the idea that the negative consequences of not being physical every day or through a week is not necessarily immediately apparent, is it? It's kind of something that might come to visit us later on in our lives, and the idea that today we don't have to pay for it today. We're not paying today. We're maybe not paying for it this week or even at the end of the year, but that the benefits of exercise overall on our health and wellness, reducing our risk of cardiovascular disease, stroke, that's heart disease, heart attacks. What else, Nikki? What else is it helping us to prevent? Lungs, keeping our lungs healthy, hearts, minds. What else? Go on. Have you got a list?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you've covered a lot of them there, but what you've actually hit on there is my absolute passion project in terms of work that I do and the way that I work with women. So what we know about exercise is it has huge benefits. If exercise was a pill, then everybody would be taking it, right? It's easy. All the benefits that we can get, physical, mental, social, emotional, all those things we can kind of get from exercise. And if we think about kind of that menopause transition, there's two sort of elements around our health and wellness at this particular stage of life. One is around the menopause itself and the symptoms that we get, and the fact that women get all these a lot of symptoms that can be very debilitating, and impact life quite significantly. And for some women, make life very difficult and very uncomfortable and very unhappy. And exercise can certainly help with improving many of those, as we've already spoken about. But actually, my real passion for working with women is actually beyond that. So if we think about menopause, the average age for menopause in the UK being around 51, we probably, with the best will in the world, if we're all as lucky as we hope that we want to be, we've probably got the best part of another 25, 30, 35 more years of life left after that. And we want to be healthy, and as we lose those hormones, as we lose the estrogen in particular, the testosterone as well, the progesterone within our bodies, that have been doing very protective things for our health, around our heart health and our brain health, and our looking after our pressure and our bone health and our muscle strength, all those sorts of things. It's been doing it for us, and we've maybe been able to get away with doing very little, if any, exercise because our body's been looking after itself. Now we have to do those things for ourselves, and it absolutely includes exercise as a key pillar if we want to have long, healthy lives moving forward. And it's quite difficult, and I understand that women perhaps in late 40s and early 50s thinking about doing exercise now to build that muscle strength and bone strength. So for example, when they get into their 70s and 80s, they're not the ones that have falls, because at that stage you become more unbalanced, you have falls, it can result in potentially fractures, it can it can result in loss of independence and loss of mobility at a time when we still want to be, active and living life to the full. But it's important to think about those things now as we're going through this phase of life, and put those things in place so that we can have that kind of long health, as well as our heart health and our brain health and our blood pressure and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head there, Nikki, didn't you? You know, menopause is not just for Christmas, it's for the rest of your life. And now we've really got to up our game, actually, as women. So if we accept, what you just said there, which is that exercise is a must, basically. How can we help people to find the motivation to begin being more active, doing more movements, and making that a default? Well, I suppose we have kind of interwoven these suggestions into our conversation as we've gone along, but so aiming for a more active lifestyle overall. And I think, I harp on in our house anyway about television being the downfall of mankind. And, and so, the time, there are ways, aren't there, of monitoring our screen time. And particularly if you've got a sedentary job where you have no choice but to sit in front of screens or sit at a reception desk or, whatever you're doing. Then for us to be mindful of the fact that the time when we don't literally have to be doing it, then maybe there's other choices that we could be making around, hobbies or interests, things like you said. Oh my gosh, I want to go line dancing. That's something I want to do this year. It's definitely on my list of things to do. If there's something on your list that you've not been doing, then have a go, because new things are good for us on so many levels, aren't they? Socially, get out and do something with other folks, and then movement and music and all this good stuff. So if we can incorporate it into our downtime and just head for a more active lifestyle overall. And then, the other thing that I've kind of read about is giving your workouts meaning. And so, combating those symptoms of menopause, like mood disturbances and sleep disruption in particular. Then, if we think that these things ultimately are going to pay dividends when it comes to mood, enhancing the mood, making life just a bit more sunny overall, helping with sleep. I mean, not sleeping is really detrimental to our health overall. So I know that the yoga work that I do, the breath work in particular, can be really powerful stuff when it comes to managing sleeplessness. And it definitely worked for me. I'll say that much. And so, it might be that your reason for doing these things, that is your motivation to help with these symptoms, and to pick something from the exercise repertoire that speaks to that the most, because there's lots of different things we could be choosing to do, aren't there? And I love doing different things. I'm going swimming in the outdoor pool near where I live. I'm going to
Lido.
Well, no, it's a lake. It's not a lake. There's no.
Oh, a lake. Great.
Yeah. But it's they have those lifeguards, so you're not going to drown or anything. Well, you might drown, but hopefully the lifeguard. I can't guarantee you're not going to drown, obviously. But Nikki, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, again, so much to kind of unpick there. Certainly, variety, potentially bring variety in if that's something that helps you, and kind of do different things. That can kind of help keep you motivated, so you're not always thinking about just doing the one thing, but kind of doing different things and trying different things. I think it's also interesting, the comment that you made around kind of the yoga and the breath work. So, sort of energy and fatigue is one of the big areas that, I work with women around. It's a huge thing at this particular phase of life. And some of it very often is driven by sleep issues that we have. And so it's interesting the point that you make around kind of the yoga and the breath work can really help with the sleep. And then the sleep can then help return some of the energy that you might be struggling with. And that energy can then actually then help translate into, more motivation or more ability to then do other types of exercise, perhaps, or movement, or just give you a more active lifestyle that you might otherwise have been struggling with, or even not even necessarily thinking about the activity, but it can feed into clearing your mind, enabling you to think more clearly, which can help improve your performance at work, for example, or just help you, you be more present, and more positive around kind of friends and family. So it is about looking at what really matters to you in life, what areas do you want to improve in life, and there's almost certainly something that some form of exercise can contribute to. And and like we say, yoga and Pilates is just as valid an exercise as running, swimming, or cycling. It's whatever works for the things that you need to achieve, and whatever works for you, for the things that you enjoy.
Yeah, and I really value cross training, so that you're doing something for different bits of you on different days, whether it's your heart, cardiovascular, your strength, muscles, lifting weights, doing Pilates, yoga, whatever. Have this recipe. I suppose it is a bit like a recipe, isn't it? You need 4 ounces of this and 6 ounces of that, and and then overall you've got a cake that rises beautifully. And so thank you. You know what, I've really enjoyed our chat today. I hope that people have found something that speaks to them and that they can take away and inject into their everyday lives to just make life easier. Ultimately, that's all we're trying to do, isn't it? Help people with their the daily grind, daily bind, whatever you want to call it. So, well, thank you, Nikki, so much for coming along. And, we'll let people know where to find you. And it's wonderful to see you again, because obviously I've seen you before, but not for quite some time. So thanks so much for giving you time. And do have a wonderful holiday weekend, won't you? Take care.
Yep. And you. Speak
Thank
soon.
you. Yeah, take
Bye.
care. Bye for now.